I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. All right, what's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like right here at Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Very happy to be your host. Let me welcome everybody who's here live. Come on in. To those who will see and hear this later, welcome and peace to you as well. Right off the top, just setting it up now. It looks like at 1 o'clock later today, we're going to be back with. Let me just check the email. Ooh, it looks like at 1 o'clock we'll be back with Lynn Washington and Dr. Todd Stephen Burrows to talk about their latest piece. Lynn Washington's latest piece, which excerpts Dr. Burrows' forthcoming work on Mumia, fascinating piece looking at the comparison between Tyree Nichols and Mumia. So come on back at 1 o'clock if you can. And again, if you're not here live and seeing this live, when you finish this, go watch that video. Very much looking forward to that. Yes, thank you, and shout out to Quaker Anarchist for all of that social media support. Leah, good morning, greetings, Sugar Booger, everyone, welcome. Sugar Booger heavy on the social medias as well. Thank you very much. Dead Man Animations, yes, we are live. Welcome everybody. Come on in. Invite others to join you. I know I caught this conflict myself, but I had already committed to this, so I didn't want to not do it because I want to watch the Spurs game, but we might have to wrap a little early. Anyway, in fact, honestly, so let me get right to it, and then I'll come back to the chat in a little bit. But momentarily, I want to stay focused because I think what the 1619 Project, as it is as a Hulu series, is presenting one hell of a challenge for us. And despite what I said on Earn Your Liberation recently, it is a lot more sophisticated, a much greater challenge to my Vernon philosophy of Black media avoidance, which again just simply argues that in this context, understanding the colonizing function and the support of the colonial project that media have, we cannot look for ourselves in these mainstream products. And the more we like it, the more we should be critical, and that's sort of how I'm approaching this, because this was, I think, episodes 3 and 4 were remarkably challenging to my philosophy, and I think are really going to make those of us wanting to organize, build more revolutionary formations. We're going to have a lot of work to do. Even those of us in academia or those of us in teaching of any kind who want to get sort of radicalize audiences, a product like this is going to be very difficult to deal with. So I'm very happy to get a chance to talk with you all about it. Again, just starting off, it's a Hulu product, it's a Disney product, it's a Harpo Films product, an Oprah product. Oprah has been heavily involved in helping promote this. So all of those old, long-standing critiques of her neo-colonial relationship to all of this, her Black bourgeois, Black capitalist relationship to all this, I think hold. But I'll just pull this cover up again, because what I am definitely seeing here is that the project, the series, is decidedly an anti-soda endeavor. It's a decidedly reverse hashtag endeavor, whether they're officially somehow connected with that struggle or that effort or that reactionary movement, or whether they are somehow independent of that and just dovetailing with some of those ideas. It is clearly the reverse hashtaggers are going to, I mean, this is a propaganda model for them, a propaganda outlet. Oh, it's not coming in from the front. It's not coming in from my mic. Yeah, it is. What's the problem? I don't know. I think that might be your end. I'm not sure because on this end, everything is set up properly. So I don't know. It's definitely coming through the mic, through this mic. So double check your settings. I'm looking at mine again. I am not seeing any issues. Is anyone else having any issues with the audio? Please share. It's my end. Okay, let's see. Let's try. I don't know if this is going to make a difference. If this adjusts the settings at all. Let's see. The input is the Shure mic. The output is the pods. The mic is set up properly here. Does that make any difference? Oh, but I sound, it's a bit different. A little echoey. Is this any better? Is this making any different? That should not be happening. I don't know. It should not be the computer mic. That would be very disappointing for me if that was the case, because it's literally showing me that it's coming through this microphone. Okay. I sound like I'm in a bigger room. Oh, that sucks. And it sounds the same now? It still sounds the same? Yeah, Sally Walker. This series is for you. Oh, that sucks though. I'm not good with that. I just don't know what else I could do. That's disappointing because it's set up. No, it doesn't. But if that's really that much of a problem, if that really bothers people, I can do that too. It's the echo in my room, but nothing has changed in here. I don't know. I do have acoustic panels actually. And So Lee, thank you for the correction. Thank you. So Lee, thank you. Echo fits the brick room, but there should not be an echo. Oh, that is frustrating. All right, I don't know. I don't know. I'm doing the best I can do. I don't know. There's literally nothing on this end suggesting there's an issue. I just keep double checking and everything is just, it should not be a problem. Even, and the mic settings are locked, so they can't change. Oh, man. All right. So, let me just get to my notes here. Increasingly more sophisticated as episodes go and will need a lot of hard work to overcome the limitations. It's definitely a reverse soda documentary. It praises from the very first episodes. I think I've covered some of this already, and I'm just going to kind of rush to this part. They literally praise service in the military and claim that and make a black claim to the American flag. So it's very, I mean, obviously we get it, and I even can feel the heartstrings pulled in certain moments where I get it. A lot of our ancestors forcibly suffered greatly for this place, and I get the argument that we deserve more than our fair share at this point of what this country provides. Okay. And this series does not do that. When we're not careful with that, then that approach can easily turn into a reverse soda hashtag thing. It can easily be turned into patriotic, narrow, nationalist, conservative, whatever, all of these different things that whatever labels, a very neoliberal, neo-colonial. It just becomes a very, well, that. And then all of the radical internationalism and all the brilliance and beauty of it is of the Pan-African struggle, of the Black experience itself, is erased for a myopic focus on this nation state. So as I make a note somewhere in here, and I'll probably come back to it, the series sort of, once you accept the reverse hashtag anti-soda perspective, the series is fantastic. And this is sort of the problem that I think we're going to have. Maybe not fantastic, at least episodes 3 and 4, I think were really well done. They are an immense challenge to what I think we're doing here. Again, once you accept that frame, they clearly establish that frame. There is no Pan-Africanism. There is no African, none of that. This is a Black American, again, just as this depicts, this is what it is. It is saying, give us ours. And the problem is, as I'm saying, when you go too far with that without focus, you end up with the hop and bob syndrome. So that's sort of, I mean, that's very much okay. So they do a whole thing about voting and how Black people got Obama elected as some watershed moment, and that the backlash against that and against him, and it was about attacking voting rights. They allude to some of that work about making sure Black voters are not erased from the voting rolls. And I made a note here that Greg Palast has already done all of that work, and in a much better way. And I even thought, but if maybe the series is trying to avoid white punditry as a sort of political statement, and maybe that's why they would not want to include Greg Palast's work, which should at this point be very well known in this regard. And as I'll come to, nope, that wasn't the concern. That wasn't the concern. So they just, felt they ignored, as I make a note here, as they make these allusions back and forth to Dr. King and civil rights movement, that Dr. King himself had already in his own lifetime criticized the limitations of the Voting Rights Act and his support for it. They talk about how proud it was to be able to hang out at the Bush White House. They have Black, I don't think that they're talking to Black voters and citizens and elders, being proud to have made it to the Bush White House. As I said, I didn't know that Nicole Hannah-Jones was mixed, and they talk a little bit about that and talk about her family background. And I actually like the point that they make. And I had to admit that I thought that in terms of this issue of being mixed, she does I think a pretty, in this context, and in a very quick way, not to belabor the point, I think she actually does a good job of quickly situating herself as part of the Black community and an extension of that struggle. And she makes the point that she was born of both worlds, but could only be designated in one. And I wrote that down because that I felt like, that spoke a lot to me, and my own experience and feelings. So that to me was a core.
Now listen, that's called my boy.
That was definitely bars to me. Being born of both worlds, but could only be designated in one. So this idea that even those of us who tend nowadays to the fairer, could be part of a white community, that has never been an option. So so I did appreciate how she did that. And she talked about how her birth certificate does not designate, starting from the birth certificate, it designates the race of, everybody's race. I actually went looking for mine. I don't think my race was designated on my birth certificate. If I remember correct, I couldn't find the original, but the original on mine said Black father. And did they say Negro? I might be confusing memories, but they're basically like Black father, white mother. And then for me, it was left, they didn't say. So I thought so that was a little bit of a difference, in terms of what they're just, you know. But then they do the little things again, kind of bringing us again, kind of bringing it back to this, where one of the black families that they sort of highlight to focus on their experience, one of the father's a cop. Now they don't really make this an issue, but you just see it. And I'm thinking of all of the black families to talk to about blackness in America. Why would a cop? I was like, mm. All right. So, but then starting with episodes 3 and 4, I think this is really where I think we have some major issues here, because again, I think 3 and 4 are very well done. And I mean, yes, and I'm saying beyond the production value, which of course is going to be out of this world. Everything sounds perfect, looks perfect, the transitions, the graphic. I mean, everything is beautiful. Even when they bring up old footage, they've 4K'd up all the old, like it's beautiful, which is part of the problem, because they do start to check off a lot of the things that maybe some of us would look for, again, only within the context of the United States. So what do I mean by that? They interview Wesley Morris. He becomes a centerpiece, who's a New York Times writer, which of course everybody's New York Times, elite mainstream, this and that, who writes a lot about Black American music. By the way, I just posted it this morning because Dr. Fredara Hadley is interviewed in this series, a brilliant ethnomusicologist now at Juilliard. But I have an interview with her that I posted just this morning, talking about the GOAT, Donny Hathaway Live, the greatest album of all time. So when I saw her, I said, let me post that. That was like, that's dope. It was good to see her. But it was also a reminder of what I don't have anymore, which is when I think the first thing I did when I started working with the Real News Network in 2015, I think the first video we did an interview with Marilyn Zuniga, who at the time had just been fired from her teaching job for teaching Mumia to her students. And then I think the second thing we did was go, with some controversy, I might add, to New York, because I wanted to do, and we did it. I linked up with Professor Hadley. I linked up with Greg Tate, the late great Greg Tate, and we did extended interviews. We drove around Brooklyn with videotaping, looking at where Do the Right Thing was shot and talking about this and that. Because Hadley at the time was also running, I don't know if she still does it, but she was running like a New York City based tour thing where you could do Black music tours, a history of New York through the link to her company is in the show description if it's still up and running. I didn't check the link. I just copy and pasted real quick. We did all of this, had this great interview with Greg Tate about music and Blackness and his work with Everything But the Burden, and where I learned the word panopticon for the first time, and get all the way home, and the crew I was working with said the video and audio is gone. It erased, didn't save. I don't know what it was the most demoralizing. While we were there in Brooklyn, it's one of the few times I've been recognized out in the streets, and someone were walking down the street, somebody starts yelling, "I mix what I like, I mix what I like." I was like, what? Long story short, it was a brother in Brooklyn who started talking about the problems of gentrification, but how he ended up participating in it. As an owner of a brownstone in Brooklyn, he felt compelled to charge the elevated rents to white people moving into it was deep. Anyway, so all that's gone. But I was reminded of that when I saw Professor Hadley in this series. I was like, oh man, I was like,
No, God!
Oh, it's such a painful memory. And then, of course, now that Tate is no longer here, it would have been even better to have that because it was such a good conversation. I can't believe. Anyway, so she's in. She. We'll come back to that, but I, you know. So then, and they start talking about this history of Black music. Motown, the first Black-owned music company, and as they talk about that was the first Black-owned music company making music for America. And then they do raise this issue of what happens when Black people are producing art for white audiences. I don't think that they go where we would want to go with it. They don't go where I want to go with it, but they did enough that I think, again, when we come with our critique, if we're dealing with audiences of this series, it's going to be harder for us to drag them out of the limitations of the Hulu capture. Because again, the context is telling this story in a way to convince white audiences, obviously, primarily, that Black people deserve full recognition, maybe reparations. I don't know where they're going fully, but that Black people deserve a recognition of our humanity, that Black people deserve every bit of everything that this, and again, on the one hand, of course, that's correct. But on the other hand, there's no critique of, do we want to benefit from the imperialism this country continues? Do we want to adjust the imperialism? Do we want to create something new that we then want to take credit for? Do we want to, humbly respect our ancestors who suffered greatly, but then break away from the project that they were forced to help build? That kind of stuff isn't really brought in. It's just sort of left with this idea that we built it, so we deserve it. They get into the history of blackface and referring to it as the original appropriation, and then they do some very good things like making the allusions and the comparisons to other parts in history, including to today. And this is the thing, they like little things for me. They completely, when they connect. Am I going too far ahead? I guess it doesn't matter. But when they connect Eminem to this history of the original blackface appropriation, that is the white people performing blackness for the benefit of white audiences,
Now listen, that's called my boy.
I was like, no, they didn't. They were like, and honestly, I get, have fun getting into my own head. I'm like, damn, this is the writers like, we gonna get Jared with this one right here. We gonna get all them Jareds out there. Drop that Eminem appropriator joint. I was like, ah. Because they don't do the Greg Tate. They don't go where Greg Tate went. Or where those of us who are to the left of Tate would go. They don't do that. But they leave it out there, so you like, yeah, you get enough of that. So I don't know. I think they focus for a time on some young folks extending the musical traditions in HBCUs and Fisk University. So again, they kind of do the thing that I've come to really, 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 really dislike, where HBCUs are reduced to only this vague repository of Black culture, of song, of dance, of step shows, of marching bands. But as I wrote here, where did I put it? No scholarship, no politics, no radicalism, no Myers. And we're going to come back to Josh Myers briefly in a little bit. In other words, that kind of work that is suppressed at HBCUs is never even acknowledged in these moments, because again, the pundits all come from the New York Times, from it's we're going to come back to, it's the Robin Kellys, it's my Africana comrade, as we're going to see coming up, like apparently in episode 5, Dr. Leslie Alexander. It's the big university, big time scholars that get the punditry spaces. It's the Douglas Blackmans, it's the Seth Rockmans, it's the white scholars that associate with the New York Times and all these other. They get the HBCUs only get brought up when it's time to talk about let's sing in some old spirituals and do some marching band stuff. And I just, oh God, this is it's so frustrating. And they keep coming back to this refrain I wrote here, our country, and we're the fabric of the country, slave songs and the fabric of the country, of our country. And then when they come back to music and the discussion of Motown, they describe Motown as the antidote to minstrelsy. So again, Berry Gordy and what he does with Motown is seen as heroic. And they actually end up prefiguring that hip hop narrative that I'm saying I don't like, that keeps coming up in the work of popular scholarship, and once again in the work of the PBS series that has just started. So this series is doing the same sort of thing, starting with in earlier generations of music. In fact, they bring it up to hip hop, and the point that they're making again, just like I said about the PBS documentary, every time something bad in Black history is noted in the series, the response is, but Black people came with breakdancing. Black people came with DJing. Black people started rhyming. And here it's Black people came with Motown. And yes, they were targeting white audiences, but they still brought that soul and that Blackness and that Americanness and that even when they refer to Marvin Gaye, of course, that radicalness. But there's no, I think, appropriate investigation of that's not the only thing that was happening. It's part of that Black capitalist, Black bourgeois, neo-colonial assimilation that Berry Gordy was involved in there. There's still that exploitation of the artists that goes on in Motown. I mean, that doesn't get discussed here. And ultimately, what I think it doesn't do is investigate the critique of that Harold Cruzian question of what happens when your cultural expression becomes part of the American cultural store. What happens in that colonial process? They don't investigate that, and they certainly don't investigate the conclusion that we've reached today, that despite all this great art and all this great music, Black people have no money and Black people have no power. Now, they don't do it in that way, but they do something slick with this that is very, So then they talk a little bit about white audiences accepting Black performers, but that question that Greg Tate asked, what does it mean for Black people to have that panopticon view of watching white people without recognition of the Black gaze perform Blackness for white audiences? Man, Tate, I thought that was, anyway, I love that book. And then I also have, I wrote a couple questions here. Like, they don't talk about the Motown engagement with white executives, white elements of the industry, white writers, so on and so forth. And then they get into this really complicated section with the basis, the legendary musician and songwriter Nile Rodgers, who I did not know wrote the legendary Soul Glow anthem for Coming to America. I didn't know he wrote that. But Nile Rodgers says something in here that I've never heard and I thought was wildly dangerous, again, for this series. He talks about how he had been in the New York City, one of the chapters of the Black Panther Party. But that he says, with the emergence of disco and his ability to write music, he said, disco, this is a quote, disco was more effective. He was more effective at organizing I'm sorry, I didn't. I don't think I got it verbatim. Disco. I wrote here. Disco was more effective organizing than the Black Panther Party. He says he does say that disco was a more effective organizing tool, and he was a more effective organizer with disco than he was with the BPP because he said I was a better organizer, quote. Everybody, so when he wrote that song, everybody dance, clap your hands. He was like, that was his example of being a better organizer because he could, with one song, bring all of these people, black, white, etc., together on a dance floor. And I'm sitting there saying, wait a minute, come on, man. Even for a Hulu series, nobody's gonna challenge him. Nobody's gonna say cut tape. Let's have you respond to that differently. Let's do a second take. They just leave it out there. That was the part that I was like, now you're making it easy for me again, that part. And then they talk about how his career took off by writing for white bands. Disco, he had a disco hit. Disco didn't go anywhere. His career went down. He doesn't talk about returning to the movement. He talks about waiting for David Bowie to save his career and writing songs for Madonna and Duran Duran. It was so depressing. I was like, what? How is this a victory? How is this? This should be held up as the example of the problem. This brilliant artist can't have a career unless he's writing songs for Madonna and David Bowie, who also, by the way, they don't talk about this here, but also had Luther Vandross once and Lisa Fisher singing backup for him. That's offensive. And I don't even hate David Bowie, but that's offensive. Duran Duran, anyway. And then I wrote, hip hop is so big because white people love it too. You can't have a hit record unless white people love it. No, they said that. I'm sorry. He said that. He said, because he gets into hip hop and he says the point that I would want to say, but they don't leave it up for enough criticism. They just leave it out there, which I think is damaging because it almost is suggesting that this is okay. Because the theme of the series is this is our country. So if you got to make money making music for white folks, that's part of the success thing. And that's how he said that's why he said hip hop is so big, because white people, if you want to hit, white people gotta love it. Which is a fact. But it's not there's no real criticism with it. And then he talks about how he came to realize that he had to make an arrangement with the Sugar Hill Gang and Sylvia Robinson when they, without permission, used his bass line and the Chic song for the Sugar Hill thing. But they don't talk about the point I was making in the other video about Sylvia Robinson being, instead of being held up as a black female superhero, should be held up for criticism as, from the beginning, turning hip hop into a commercial corporate tool that wasn't at all authentic. In the sense that those rhymes were other people's rhymes, the people performing, some of them were performing under the guise of being other people. They weren't the original artists. She was just throwing people together. Blah, whoop, whoop, whoop. But they don't talk about any of that because they're spending too much time in talking about how everything in this country is basically black and wonderful, and therefore we deserve everything. And I think multiple things can be true. Yes, everything has a basis in blackness. So much of this country has a basis in blackness, but that doesn't mean that the end result is a good thing and that we shouldn't have some sort of more radical intervention with it. And then they bring that hip hop, I said they bring the narrative back that, again, black people coming from nothing but can produce art and culture that white people like. And this is somehow coming and getting over. I thought I would try to find this old, because they do a thing. DJ RBI out of DC, shout out to him. We used to work with him on our WPFW, and he came on our show one time and did the brilliant demonstration of sampling, showing how, in fact, they even do the same example here, showing how Stevie Wonder's song became an ODB song and other things like that. They bring us Rhapsody. She's featured in an interview, and I thought, of course, perfect. Because, of course, I'm thinking of the exchange we had on Twitter years ago. with Ninth Wonder, where she does this ode to Betty Shabazz that is nothing about Betty, nothing about Malcolm, nothing about radical politics at all. And I just simply said, great track, but it's not. How is it an ode to Betty Shabazz? And Rhapsody and Ninth Wonder, sort of beat me up on Twitter for a little bit. Talk about this, we do art, this is, of course, the whole thing. By mentioning Betty Shabazz, Black people will study her and will become revolutionary. And the song doesn't have to have any content about it. Okay. So I thought it was perfect that she be here because she is a wonderfully talented MC who is not bringing any of the overt radicalism that would be a threat to projects like this, because a project like this is just wanting to remind everybody that Black America is America. So you should love our talent and our contribution. They talk about Nina Simone, but none of her radical interventions with civil rights. They certainly don't play the clip where she talked about, I wanted to go get a gun and put down a piano and get a gun and all that kind of stuff. They don't do any of that. We don't get that. But here's where this is where I wrote my note where they broke my Vernon philosophy. They broke me because they said they called Eminem a minstrel. And then I said, now I love the series. And then on top of that, they come right back and do something very slick where they have this well-produced outro to chapter 3, to episode 3, and they've just called Eminem an updated version of appropriating minstrelsy. And then and if you don't know it, you don't know what you're hearing. But if you know it, they're with you because they start playing the brilliant, legendary, genius maggot brain. Oh man, and I just went blank on the guitarist's name. I knew I was going to do this. I should have. Eddie Hazel, right? Yeah, Eddie Hazel. Brilliant. You start hearing it. I mean, they start killing it as they do this little outro, and I was like, and I wrote an expletive here. I just wrote F you. Stop messing with me like that. And as they do that, they start to lead to the next episode 4 by talking about how an updated minstrelsy was occurring musically with Eminem, and an updated version of the cotton picking plantation experience of enslaved Africans in the United States was being duplicated in Amazon warehouses. And I said, damn, that was slick. Very well done. With the imagery of the fields going into the imagery of the packaging plants in Amazon, I said, damn, these slick. And then the next episode, chapter 4, is titled Capitalism, where they intro it with a clip of Martin Luther King criticizing capitalism, with Gil Scott-Heron's Whitey on the Moon, juxtaposing the poverty of today with Bezos's moon. I mean, they were getting it. I mean, it's brilliant. They drop in Mobb Deep. And then they bring in the white Seth Rockman and Caitlin Rosenthal to define capitalism. And to save themselves, of course, they get Robin Kelly. And I wrote here that I like his point about finding new ways to understand how slavery manifests today. So I was like, I was like, they're messing with me. They're making it. It's going to be harder to parse out the limitations. And I should have written down their names. They don't focus on Chris Smalls, which I thought was, I admit, I thought was odd, but also maybe a good thing, because they focused on a brother who was in working with Chris Smalls, and a sister who was organizing one of the plants, I think in Alabama. And it's very powerful stuff. They talk about strikes. They talk about unionization. They eventually get to Robin Kelly talking a little bit about racial capitalism. I did make a note here. I thought it was odd. I was curious. So far, at least, there's no Gerald Horne. And then here's the note. And I was like, this is maybe coming back to what I'm saying about the what they're doing, framing wise. And I wrote here, is there no Gerald Horne, because the series abandons his thesis? So again, remember, Nicole Hannah-Jones said that Horne's Counter-Revolution of 1776 is the basis of her written 1619 Project analysis about this country wanting everything it could do to protect its relationship to enslavement. And that drew a lot of hostility for her in the project. In this series, none of that is discussed so far. Through 4 episodes, there's no discussion of Horne's analysis of the American Revolution, which of course included at least two things that this series can't address, at least properly. One, that Africans were the rebellious force that ended these institutions, and 2, that they themselves had worldviews that extended beyond the borders of the United States, because that's not in this. So maybe that's why we don't see Horne yet. Or so I don't know. There's no sign of him coming up yet, so I don't know. But then they do this thing. Oh man, they did something dope. I mean, they show how they go into the history of Bessemer, Alabama, and they show how it was what Douglas Blackman, who wrote what was the title of his book? Because remember the whole new Jim Crow thing, Slavery by Another Name. Because I remember at the time we were like, well, aren't we walking backwards calling prisons the new Jim Crow when he had already called it the new slavery? But they have him in here, that's also interesting. So Michelle Alexander doesn't seem to be interviewed. Her sister Leslie is coming up in episode 5 apparently, but Douglas Blackman is brought in to talk about the relationship of prisons to enslavement. I wonder, yeah, that's I'm curious about that. Anyway, but they do this, it's dope, of talking about how Bessemer, Alabama was basically a slow motion mass grave of Africans. And it is brutal. I mean, this is it's a very well done. That episode I thought was very well done. 3 was good, 4 was even better. And I'm seeing the limitations even as I'm appreciating, but it's going to be a difficult hurdle. And then they show how Bessemer, Alabama went from a slow motion mass grave of enslaved Africans to being sold to U.S. Steel, to then becoming a packaging plant for Amazon. And they show you all of these black and brown workers, and white, but mostly black and brown workers, just suffering in the same place that this slow motion mass grave had basically. And then they talk about some of the pandemic contradictions that in terms of exposing the nature of this economic system. And Nicole Hannah-Jones's cousin is on screen talking about how she made more money during the pandemic than she did working before the pandemic. And they leave like, well, what does that say about so it's all part of this in the context of this conversation about what capitalism is and how racial capitalism is just capitalism, but that has, with an acknowledgement of the always present racial component. And then they give us a teaser to show you that Leslie Alexander's coming in to all of this, who's I know she's done more than I've read, but I've years ago read her book on what was it called? It was about Africans in America. And I remember using it a lot for the section where she talked about the laws that prevented or discouraged Black people here from identifying as Africans. Anyway, so I look forward to seeing what her contribution coming up. But so then I ended this by saying, in my notes, that is, this is doing such a good job of dealing with the problem once encased in U.S. nationalism. And that's why we need the approach that Josh Myers and others were bringing to this. And so someone on Twitter hit me up and said, did you hear Dr. Myers' SoundCloud interview? And here's some notes that he was working with. I did reach out actually and asked him if he happened to be available, could join us today, but he's too busy, and I think it's good because he's promoting that book, and it deserves to be promoted. And people need to know that HBCUs do this good work. Rep for all of us, Josh. Rep for all of us. Anyway, but I did pull up some of his notes on the 1619 project, and this is where I think this is what the video can't, the series can't accommodate. So this is just an excerpt from Josh Meyer's notes. So this takes us back to that first question. If all this is true and is documented, why the focus on 1619? And Nicole Hannah-Jones, in several interviews, I found I was watching a number of different things. Oprah, and 1619 for her had been a big deal, apparently, going back to her early schooling days. Anyway, Myers continues, and the answer, in other words, why the focus on 1619? And the answer to me is that such a focus drives a claim on and of nation. We have been taught to see ourselves as linked only to the American National Project. And Jamestown is the foundation for that. Not St. Augustine, not San Miguel de Guadalupe, not Bermuda, but Jamestown. And somehow, if we link the entirety of the experience of enslavement to that moment, it calls for a clear embrace of belonging, a claim premised on the presence of our enslaved ancestors, to the founding of the project of American democracy. This claim of and on nation not only erases the reality that what was founded in that moment was settler colonialism, a brutal regime of genocide, an ongoing genocide. It erases the reality that for Africans, the project was never to be endured, let alone embraced. It erases the international context for Black freedom and that sought alliances with those who were opposed to the nation responsible for our presence here. The Black radical tradition never sought to converge with the ideals of the Enlightenment, the colonial origins, the colonial origins of America, or even the mature nation state that was imaged or imagined in 1776 and 1787. The grounding ideas of these projects were, in fact, against the full humanity, the ontological totality of the African. They remain so. And I think this is just representative of a lot of the important ideas and analyses that we do not get in a series like this, because again, the Hulu series, the Disney product, the Harpo Oprah product is just wanting us to get our American on. But it's a very well done. I mean, they just did a good job at doing what they want to do. And so anyway, so that's that was what I wanted to share with you all. And great, I've just confirmed. Okay, we do have Doctors Washington and Todd Burrows coming up at 1 o'clock in a little over an hour to talk about the latest in comparing Tyree Nichols to Mumia. And it's always good to talk with them about those issues in Mumia in particular. But if there are any of you who have any comments or questions or something, the critiques, queries, conundrums, catechisms, cacophony, calumny, consternation, contemplation, condemnation, please raise them up in the chat or feel free to jump in the StreamYard even if you're so inclined. Paul. So I'm assuming you've been a subscriber for a while to be able to participate in the chat. So it's unfortunate that this is your perspective. So let me borrow from these theist atheist debates that I've been watching a lot of. So your assertion is that Black Americans have no connection with the continent. What is your evidence of that? Rather than me ramble on and on, what is your evidence of the absence of a connection between Black people here and the African continent? I'm showing off. When am I showing off? So that would be one thing. What is your evidence that Black people have no connection to the African continent? Wow. Yeah, I'm not mad at you. Sorry to hear that. Yeah, I'm not mad. It doesn't sound Alabama. I've been to Alabama. It's the whole South to me is spooky. Peace to everybody who's there, survived there. Maryland that's as far south as I'm trying to be. The US is as far south as I'm trying. Actually, that's not true. I love being in Panama. I love being in Central and South America. and in the Caribbean. So I'm just joking. I'm just playing. I'm just playing there a little bit. I don't know what you're referring to, Anthony, but I'll take it. I'll just take it. I'll just take whatever, you know. Piece from Josh reminds me of the black belt thesis. Have you talked about that at all? I have not talked about it. You know what? That's something I have personally not talked. I think, I want to say if we go back, I think Kalaji has done some with this. And I think back in the day with Renegade Culture, they did more with that topic, but I would have to, but I haven't. I certainly haven't done enough with that. Not here or anywhere. So that's a good point. Oh, was I rhyming? Who was rhyming? Did I rhyme? It was an accident if you're talking to me. Is this supposed to be an answer to my question? Because we're already here. We haven't been back in 400 years. They didn't come back to get us. We the real Native Americans. Is that the answer? But I mean, this is none of. It's false to say we haven't been back in 400 years. There's been a lot of cross and back and forth exchange. It's false also to blanketly say they didn't come back to get us. There were efforts by Africans to resist the process of enslavement. There were efforts among Africans to build Pan-African unity movements that would welcome Africans from the diaspora back to the continent under a United States of Africa, for instance. The real so-called Native Americans are indigenous people. So I don't know. Anyway, okay, cool. So 40J Blaze, let's see. Oh, your devices are not connected. I can't add you to the studio yet. Sorry. Come on back if you can. Oh, you're just saying those are the silly. Okay, sorry. Right. Poet and didn't know it. I'm a vicious freestyler in the car though. I keep saying it. When alone in traffic, I'm nasty. I'm nice as they come. There's just no evidence of it. It's kind of like when people say, anyway, there's no connection between Black people and Africans on the continent. There's no evidence of that. Anyway, 40J, you trying to come back? Because I don't see anybody else coming back. I don't see any other questions or comments. That's why a revolution without we killing can't happen. Look at the ridiculous comment about Africa. I don't know about we killing. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, Robin Kelly's work is vicious. There's really not much quite. I mean, we could disagree about a couple things here or there, but I mean, come on now. I just wish he wouldn't have co-signed Peniel Joseph. That's the biggest thing Robin Kelly has done wrong. I think I'm gonna see him in November in Montreal. I think we're on a panel together. I think that's happening. I'm gonna ask him about that again. I'm going to. I'll be polite. I'll be trying to make it as a joke. We'll be like, "Come on, bro." Anyway, okay. I guess I'll wrap it up here and take a break. And I'll see you all in an hour. If you can, please come back. And if you're seeing this not live, please go and revisit the discussion we're about to have with Drs. Washington Jr. and Todd Stephen Burrows about a new piece just came out, I think today or very, very recently, about Mumia's case and its connection to the Tyree Nichols killing. I do have a little list, not schedules, but I have a list of petty to follow up with. It's just so many things I can't keep up. Oh no, damn, I forgot about this. You're right about that. My bad. I don't know. Personally, I might have a bigger problem with the Peniel Joseph than the Biden, but you probably, you were all right. I mean, obviously, that's just my own, I forgot about that. Yeah. All right. But I'm only going to ask him about the Peniel Joseph joint. I don't care about the Biden joint. No, you're right. But that's how you end up in these Hulu documentaries, Ricky. That's the point. You can't move left of the Democratic Party and get invited to Hulu, even if you have good things to say about racial capitalism. So maybe that's the trade-off. That's what people tell me all the time. Maybe we just got to take the trade-off. Otherwise, we get a worse documentary, which is probably what we would want to make it easier for us to do the work that we're doing. This thing is becoming more of a problem. If this is the trajectory they're going in, by the end of this series, they might have like the equivalent of an Obama presidency in terms of media depiction of Black history. Like it might be a checkmate kind of move. Woo! This thing is. No. Wait. Do they refer to enslaved Africans as African Americans? Yes. Everybody is either. I think. Because I think I correct my own self editorially automatically. It's a whole bunch of slaves, Black folk, Black American, African American. That's sort of my point. There is no, folks can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I paid pretty good attention and was taking notes. There's no acknowledgement of anything outside the US. I mean, even the process of slavery is discussed as if Black people just popped up. They don't even refer, I don't even think they make a reference to the African continent. That might have to, do they make any reference to Africa at all outside of African American? I'm not sure. I mean, again, the good job they do is relegated only to the point of that they're talking about Black people in the United States. They don't even do the thing, hip hop emerged because Harlem had become a mecca of the Black world. And the diaspora, emerged in New York and created. They don't even do it. It's like they don't even. There's none of that. It's just Black people. That's it. We, it's this. And I hope this brother's a good actor. He's very happy to be in this stock photo wrapped around it with a flag. He's doing a very good job of conveying. What did that mean? Don't go into Dyson territory. Yeah, no, this is real. You're right. I mean, this is all this. Yep. Then that's the word, sophistication. Danger in the sophistication. That's the phrase. That's it. That's what it is. That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you. That's the language. There's danger in the sophistication of what they're doing here. What is soda? Soda with the Obama. Soda is solidarity of dispersed Africans or diaspora Africans. It is the reverse of what has tried to negate it with the reverse of the hashtag, of that hashtag. And there is no soda. They're a very healthy water drinking series. There's no soda, there's no carbonated beverage at all. Yeah, I know, right? Thanks for the super chat, Brandon. Dr. Ball, do you see Dr. Horn's response and criticism of his work? No, what I did see is, and I'll probably come back and address this separately. I did see a number of folks misinterpreted, and I think willfully, what I was doing yesterday. So I'll happily accept some of the criticism. And there's been a number of really good comments in the comment section that I think are worthy of some public attention. So I appreciate that. A few people, I think, again, misinterpreted what I was doing and got at me a little bit. One person kind of was left field. So we I hope we got that straight, or maybe we just don't talk again. But either way, it's all good. But I just think, I think people need, look, it is what it is. But no, and in fact, someone sent me something else where Dr. Horn went apparently in the label of the video. I think that he did yesterday. was responding to critics, and it was sort of the same thing that I had seen before. And maybe he's right. I mean, in other words, he's only the criticism he's responding to in those videos and in the podcast. Like I actually looked at a couple of them and listened to one podcast. Is the criticism is vague, unspecific, and mostly right-wing criticism. Or like with Brianna Joy Gray, where he's criticizing the left's patriotism, which was which was clearly part of the critique that we covered of him yesterday. But no. And somebody got at me hard on Twitter too and was saying that I didn't give him enough time. But just quickly, like if you have ever had any experience over years, as some of us have, in emailing Dr. Horn, a week is a long time to not hear back. So I did ask, like, how long should I have waited? And I wasn't criticizing Horn. That's the thing. Like, I wasn't. Anyway, I don't want to do that. My point is though, like he didn't respond. You know what I mean? He hasn't yet. He's still kid. It don't matter. Hate on me, say whatever. I don't, it's all good. It's all good. But no, but no, but again, I liked the exercise, and I would have liked for him, even if he had just written it and does now and says, look, those were hacks. You shouldn't give them any attention. But I think it would have been and would still be a great. I just think I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. It is possible. Imagine that. But of course he's been on BPM. He's been on my show. I just did a thing with him in Amsterdam. I've emailed him over the years a number of times. Again, we're not friends. I'm not a peer. We're not. But I'm saying when I email, it's like, can you do an interview? And it's almost always a very quick, I can't, I can, I'm not interested. When I asked him if he would, explain his defense of Peniel Joseph, he wasn't interested. But I mean, it's whatever. I mean, when I asked him, remember I asked him if he would debate Adolph Reed. He didn't want to do that either. He doesn't do that. So I'm good with that. And that's fine. But my point is, he's been here. He's happy. He's welcome here. It's not a problem. I don't have a problem with Horn. In fact, as I said yesterday, I agree with his conclusion. Like, he's like, what am I? I'm just saying. Somebody sent me an article. I read the article and then went into a little rabbit hole and read more. So that was it. I don't know. It's all good. Whatever. You can see how your engagement in particular criticisms does give a certain validity on a very surface level, which I think is what people are responding to positive. Okay, I mean, I think that's legit. I think that's a legit point. And it's a legit point. But again, for me though, this was different. It wasn't me seeking out a critique of Horn. It was someone sent me in response to something that had been said and said, here's a critique. And I read it and it raised interesting points to me. So you're right, but okay, I see that. I mean, I can see that if people think I'm platforming, I don't know. I will say this. I didn't think I would say. I will say that I did more. I did go back and look at a whole bunch of stuff last night. I went on a whole thing. And the one thing that those articles, one of the things, they ignore Horn's point about Africans revolting and that part. And they ignore that. But the one thing else that they got wrong is one of the articles said that they couldn't find academic critiques of Horn's work. And there are more. I found them last night. I'm not trying to give them validity. I'm not saying I agree with them. I'm just saying there were more. And they weren't as strong as these or aggressive, but there were at least 3 or 4 that were saying basically, we got a couple issues with this or that. But okay, I get it. Yeah, I get that. I get that. I get that about where the criticisms are coming from. I think that's a legit point. Um, I guess I'm also saying that even with that, I thought that there were criticisms that were worthy of some discussion. That's all. But okay, it's all good. You have to give a scholarly diligence to critiques if you're going to go past platforming it. I do think you're being duplicitous. I don't think you're being duplicitous though. Well, at least thanks for giving me that. Good Lord. I'm not being duplicitous. Um, but again, I wasn't endeavoring a critique of Horn's work. So that's why I didn't feel like I needed to go do that level of diligence. I was simply, as I do here all the time, reading an article, assessing it, discussing it publicly. That was it. And then ultimately concluding that they're wrong. So this idea, I don't know. I feel like you all, I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm being defensive. I think you all are doing too much with this. I'm platforming somebody or doing, especially in the context of that conversation that I had, and definitely in the context of my broader body of work. But okay, it's all good. It's all good. Um, he should feel comfortable with BPM. Like there is no beef with him. There's no disagreement with him even. Uh, you're the Jared Ball show now. That's all. Okay. Well, that's the other thing I think is interesting. I always find it interesting when people do and don't pay attention to me. And we don't get, it's not like we do huge numbers, but okay, I get it. I get it. I hear you. And what I do love about this, and even some of the criticisms, I mean, obviously I give it, so I should get it. I don't have a problem with that. So that's it. There's nothing else. I just love it. I appreciate that. I have no problem with that. When a couple people went, I think a little far, but okay. I appreciate that. And I appreciate that we can do this. That's really what I'm saying. That's what I was saying yesterday though. But all right. Fair enough. Although, but that would suggest what I did yesterday was irresponsible, and I won't go that far. I'm not giving that. I don't think what I did yesterday was irresponsible, but I will. I hear that, and I'm gonna keep thinking about it. I'm thinking about it. I talked about it with my wife at dinner last night. It made it to the dinner table, so you know. I do mix what I like. We mix what we like what you mix. Okay, my bad. Okay, I appreciate it. Okay, but I'm good. It's good. I should be criticized if I mess up. I don't have a problem with that. Or if you think I messed up. Yeah. And honestly, we're doing too much now. I was gonna actually prepare. I was gonna do a whole separate, and I still will do a whole separate criticism thing where we can get into some of the criticism because some of the comments are really long and really good. There's some like this is actually some of the oddly, I think we've generated some of the best comment exchange that I've seen on this platform. So I actually like that stuff. I like that stuff. So, but okay, I'll continue to reflect and try to do better going forward. It's okay, you know. Academia is messy. It is messy. Oh, you got to remember, my wife is one of the those undercover miniature thugs who rides for her husband at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, she was like, you know, I'm trying to figure out the right way to say it. She was more concerned with how I was responding to the criticism. So she just wants me to be good. She didn't have an opinion on what I did per se or the argument. And she didn't see the episode, so she was just making sure, you know, right. I mean, be careful, you know. And that is good too. It's good to have a partner like that. Like at the end of the day, like even if she was like, you messed up, it would be like, but do I need to take my earrings off? No, that's not her. I'm just playing. That's definitely not her. She's not like that. She's not like that. She is ride or die, but she's not taking no earrings off. She just it's subtle. It's more dangerous than that. It's way more dangerous. More dangerous and scary than that. It's because it's like yeah. Taking earrings off suggests you will see what's happening. She don't move like that. Anyway, okay, good people. Like I said, let me take a quick break. We'll come back. Seriously, put all of these, all of your comments and criticisms. Maybe not all of them. Some of your more professional, responsible, mature disagreements and criticisms of me.
Put it in the comments.
And I will be going back. I do look at them. Some of them are not. I'm not happy to look at them, but I look at them, and then I'll compile them, and we'll do a whole thing where we do a thing, and maybe you all will jump on here, and we can do a whole thing specific to that if you want, specific to other things. I'm good. It's all good. Yeah, I'm happy for that. So anyway, I'll see you all in about 45 minutes. Let's get back to and if you can, the link is already in the show description for that episode. The new article from Lynn Washington with an excerpt from Dr. Burroughs in there. So definitely go check that out if you can before we come back at 1 o'clock. If not, when you can get to it. As always, peace if you're willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton used to say, and we will catch you in just a little while back here at I Mix What I Like and throughout the BPM platform. Thanks again, everybody. Peace.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. Wait a minute.